This movement is helpful for problems with hip extension that haven't responded to the kneeling one in the first video, and also some knee problems, having been useful in a couple of cases with limitation in getting the leg into the end of the toe-off phase of gait, and particularly if the knee won't extend nicely, and especially if there's pain around the inside of the knee. There's a bit of the lumbar plexus that I don't talk about in that first video, which is the saphenous nerve. It's a bit of an oddity as it runs down from the spine across the front of the hip and down the inside of the calf to the instep of your foot. And where it passes the knee, it's a little behind your knee and ends up in slack if you're in a kneeling position. So while that kneeling position is great for all of the lumbar plexus, including some of the saphenous nerve, more specific movement of that one is better done with a straight knee. The hip movement here is something that sometimes takes a lot of brain gym, but it's an important component to get length through the whole nerve, and probably a helpful part to work on, especially if it's not easy and your body has naturally decided to avoid that movement. That's going to have effects on how you move a whole lot of other things. I'd suggest trying this with your good side first to make the way the body avoids that hip drop on the cranky side more immediately obvious, and tends to display itself as people wanting to bend the knee of the supporting leg, and they're just not even aware they're doing it. So awareness is kind of key for lots of reasons, especially if you're looking for change. As always, start slowly, go gently. You're going to need a step for this one of any description, doesn't have to be a plastic step. Stepping up on there with one leg, the other leg's hanging off the side. So the first thing here is trying to let that whole hip drop. And as I was saying before, some people try that and just for whatever reason the brain doesn't talk to all that stuff and they just want to bend the other knee. So it's really important to think about keeping that supporting leg as straight as you can and drop your whole hip there. You're going to turn your leg in, and from there take your leg out behind you. At the end of this movement, I'm almost thinking about trying to reach my big toe as far away from my head as I can as I'm reaching back. I would say there probably is more neural tension introduced if you take yourself into a bit of flexion further up the spine, like I did with that kneeling movement. But what I've found is that one of the problems with this movement is as people go into that extension, they just end up hinging at the hip. And obviously that's not the same movement. We're not getting nice lengthening into that nerve compared to being able to really extend the hip. So keeping yourself up nice and upright, straight leg, drop the hip down, turn the leg in, reach that toe back as far away from your head as you can, and relax. Drop the hip, it might drop a little more, turn the leg in, take your leg back, reach that toe away from your head, and relax. Drop the hip again, turn the leg in, take the leg back, reach in through that big toe. And you should notice it's just a little more drop with that hip each time. It is tempting for that hip to lift as you get to the end of that movement, and this is why I've ended up avoiding adding a bit of abduction to the outside into this movement, because while that would take that saphenous nerve into a bit more tension, I find most people really can't do it without hiking in through the hip here and subsequently needing to really drop that hip again. So keeping nice lengthen through here is a really important part of this one.